Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
Hello, everybody. It's I, Alex, the producer, here in the first This Week in Geek weekly pop culture show. I'm already running out of steam. Yes, it's I, Alex, the producer. Birdman is back from his surgery, but he's tentatively off till the first week of August. We'll see how he feels as we get along here. But at least for the next few weeks, he is going to be off in recovery mode. He's going to have fits and bursts of energy for a couple hours at a time, and then he'll basically be passing out, because that's sort of the experience everybody has when you have sleeve gastrectomy or bariatric stomach reduction surgery. It seems to have all gone well, knock on wood, no complications. He was in for about a day and sent home. Used to be they'd keep you in the hospital when I went for 2 to 4 days, maybe longer sometimes, but with COVID and cut resources from the government, they're just like slapping band-aids on you, sending you home and saying, come back if you have problems. So luckily, so far, he's been good. To that end, I will actually, as of when this is coming out, I've already been over and likely staying overnight on the weekend when I would normally be recording this. So I'm actually recording this a day early, simply because just having an extra pair of eyes there to check on him, see how he's doing, help him out, because I know his wife has to work in the morning, and generally the first week that you're out of surgery, they kind of want somebody with you 24/7, just in case you need help, or in case that there's a complication that could arise. They just want an extra pair of eyes there to just monitor, see how everything's going. So it's a perfect opportunity for me to go and hang out with my buddy, see how he's doing, as well as keep an eye on him and be like, you, sleep, recovery, work. So that's what I'll be doing. As far as what we've got going this week, I have a little bit of news, and then we'll have a little bit of weird news. I thought it was going to be a supersized episode, but we're actually going to cut a fair bit because I won't be home to record at the regular time, and not as much news was gathered in that shortened period. And we've actually got a lot of other shows that you've probably been seeing coming out, where we were kind of slow on the uptick when it came to different shows in the last few months. We've had a fair bit come out, basically one a day for 6 or 7 days straight, and you're looking at 2 to 3 a week moving on forward from this week onward. So I'll make sure that I've got a few things edited and released in the meantime. Also, we're entering E3, but it's not really E3 week. It's more the summer of gaming, or summer game fest, random showcases. It's just sort of like it was in 2020 and a little bit of 2021. I will be covering pretty much each showcase. I might be splitting them up day by day, might be putting a few together, but the idea is to have our coverage and our thoughts out pretty much in a timely manner as it goes. To that end, tomorrow I should have out our pre-show coverage, and I mean pre-show is in the first sort of Summer Game Fest thing. This year, it's the first year it's not included with it, and that's the Indie Game Show from Japan. It actually happened earlier this week, and I decided to suffer through like I did the last couple of years and watch the 8 hours of streaming. Luckily, they split it over 2 days, and I found out partway through I was able to skip the first day because a lot of that was sort of Let's Plays of recent release titles that we probably already have announced here. But there was a 4.5 hour show that I ended up skimming through and found the best 7 to 10 titles or so, and I'll briefly talk about them in our pre-show coverage that we'll be releasing, like I said, on Tuesday. And then later on in the week, we start it improper with the Sony showcase, and then the following week is the 4 or 5 shows that we're going to have over that weekend. I'll probably split it up into a few, and then we'll do a recap episode once that week is done, and maybe get Ken or somebody else on. Maybe Birdman will feel up to it, because it'll be a few weeks after his surgery, to at least give us thoughts. And actually, when I visit, I might show him some of the highlights that I've picked through and discerned. Now, not necessarily going to be the best of everything that's released or shown, because there was like 150 games or more shown at the Japanese one, and I picked out maybe 9. So we'll see from there. But that's going to be sort of an idea of what we've got going on. And as far as reviews go, Birdman obviously didn't have any for this week. I thought I was going to have some movies for this, but it'll probably be next week. We've got some stuff from Paramount that I'm working through and watching. But I do have 3 game reviews for you here. Some of them are, more quick overviews. Some of them are a little more in depth. But I have Deadcraft. I have Touken Ranbu Warriors. And I have Hatsune Miku Project DIVA Megamix Plus in this show. Not necessarily sure of the order, so we're just going to throw them out in between as we go, just like on a regular show. So we'll put out a review now, and then come back with the news and move forward. So without further ado, here's me with a review.
Basically using geeks.
Leave me alone, geek boy.
Holy shit, you geeks are badass.
Our friends over at Xseed Games sent a review copy of Deadcraft for the PlayStation 4 and PS5. Now, the code I received was a PS4 Digital Deluxe Edition, which automatically unlocked the PS5 version of the same. So I installed both and found that the PS5 version was slightly larger by like a gigabyte or 2, if I remember correctly. And then from then on, I deleted the PS4 version, just played the PS5, because I always want to see, if there's a difference in efficiency or if it's just maybe loading 4K graphics. From what I can tell, the increase in size was mostly to give larger graphic assets. It's not an overly ambitious title when it comes to graphic size, and as far as graphical detail and geometry, but it does seem to scale 4K. I didn't see any anti-alias lines or anything. It seemed pretty sharp 4K graphics. Now, what is Deadcraft? And the basic premise of it is a bunch of meteors fell to the Earth, reducing everything around it to like just a barren wasteland. Think Mad Max style. And it released a weird virus that resurrects people that died and turns them into zombies. So the game starts at you're a character. There's a cutscene where you're sort of having a big fight and you're trying to escape from marauders, sort of like Mad Max Fury Road, and you fall down the bottom of a junk heap, and you seem to have the powers of like a half zombie. You have some zombie powers, and then you have human powers, and depending on what you eat, you can get more zombie-like to do certain effects to your stats, or more human-like, which does certain effects to your stats. All the while, it's a bit of a hybrid. It's an action top-down isometric game where you're attacking people, but you're also gathering resources so that you can do some farming, a little bit like I guess it's a little bit Harvest Moon, a little bit action survival RPG, because your stats are always lowering. You're always running out of food. You're running out of water and resources, and so you have to be gathering stuff, growing plants, eating them, making sure that they're not tainted with bad water, which can lower the stats, sleeping to conserve your energy, and trying to further the plot by making your way back up to the top and, I guess, doing a big fight. I don't want to reveal too much. To also uncover the mystery of the meteors and your powers, and you meet interesting people along the way. There's little towns you can go to and missions you can do, like escort missions for certain people. You can kill a lot of the townsfolk and random people. Like, you can kill NPCs that you don't need to kill for resources if you want to. It's just once they're gone, they're gone. So I do like that. It's got a bit of a Western flair to it. This is from developed by Marvelous's first studio. I think that's the same studio that did Daemon Ex Machina. This is the next game in their development cycle. And I think it's pretty well done. Again, visually, it's like a AA game or A game. Like, it's higher budget than a lot of indie titles, but not as high budget as like a high-end company. It's the kind of game you used to see a lot of in the mid-2000s era, where it was these ambitious titles without super huge budgets, but they were done by a really competent team. The voice acting in it is pretty top-notch. It seems to match quite well. Audio-wise, it's stereo. I didn't notice any like surround sound, but it doesn't really need it from its isometric view. It runs very well. It's no slowdowns. Seem to be a pure 60 FPS smooth 4K experience. I think it's pretty cool. I am not somebody who does well in survival games where you're having to manage a ton of resources to keep your character alive, but it wasn't too difficult. Like, it wasn't like unrelentingly hard, so don't be afraid. You can pick it up. You just have to get a little used to being able to manage your stuff. I'm usually used to games where you're just going and hacking and slashing, with no regard for anything else. But this does make you sit and pause and think before you make every action. Do you want to go out for a longer period of time attacking? Well, doing so will mean that you might run out of resources. Do you want to just mostly farm for resources? Okay, but then zombies might come. So it's kind of a fun balance between it. I think every time you play the game, if you start a new game, you might have a different experience in how you get around and what you do. The opening tutorial area at the beginning, a little smaller, but so that's going to be roughly the same. But as you go forward, I think you'll have a vastly different experience pretty much every time you play.
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
This Week in Geek.
News. Time for the news. And this week, I went through probably 10 different news stories that Burban had gathered in the last week and some that I had gathered, and trimmed it down just to 2 because some of the stuff had been over talked about by other outlets and other people to death, and I went, no. So I thought I would just pick 2 that I didn't think got as much coverage that I can sort of add a little bit of my insight into, especially since some other news has come out since then. And the first story here, actually no, let's get this out of the way. A bunch of people have passed away, unfortunately, in the last couple days. The biggest being Ray Liotta, and I'm sure at some point on Loose Cannon we'll do we'll pick a few of his films that are maybe less well known and watch them and discuss them with Aaron and Michael, but we're going to wait until Michael's back for that, because he had a career that I feel a lot of people just really knew him from Goodfellas and from, maybe if you're a gamer, Grand Theft Auto 3, but he did a lot more than that. I know I've seen a bunch of his films, and when I'll discuss them with them, a lot of my other friends probably haven't seen them. So it's too bad. He was pretty young. I think he went into sleep. They didn't really give any other details. And there's been a few other people. I think the drummer for Yes, the band Yes, went, and a few other people. I don't want to misspeak if I don't know their names, but it was a pretty heavy week for that, obviously. So we'll at some point do a movie tribute to him by watching some other things, because it was pretty shocking, because 67 is pretty young. Like, it's, I'm 35. It's not, I'm obviously not close to that age yet, but it's, my parents are only a couple of years younger than that, and that seems rather young. So, thoughts and prayers to his family. And moving into the regular news here, we've got a story from comicbook.com. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers original cast reportedly returning for the 30th anniversary special. Now, the story's about a week old, so I'll get into some things that have been added since, and that is here. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers celebrates its 30th anniversary this year, and the fans might be in for a big treat when it comes to celebrating that milestone. A new report from the Illuminati, which is a cool name, by the way, indicates that the original Power Rangers cast members may be returning for the occasion. According to the report, all the original cast members have been asked to return for the 30th anniversary special, though it's unclear if they will all sign on. If all of the original cast members do return for the special, it will mark the first dedicated return since 1994. It was previously reported that David Yost, who played Billy Cranston, is not only in the original Mighty Morphin seasons, but stuck around a bit longer, would be returning. Not a lot is known for the special at this time. The Illuminati reports that the special will have a 44-minute runtime and is expected to be the grand finale of the Power Rangers series that has been running since 1993. A reboot of the franchise is already in the works from Jonathan Entwistle. The project will debut on Netflix. So I guess they're going to end after 30 years. Not that there's a direct continuity, but the style of the show. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers debuted in August 1993 as part of the Fox Kids programming block. I remember watching it in kindergarten, though, and I went to kindergarten in 1992. It's not like it's aired in Canada first, so I don't get 93. I got to double check that at some point, because I remember seeing it, unless I saw it in grade 1, but I remember kindergarten watching it. Anyway, the series was a major 90s pop culture phenomenon. No duh. Series originally starred yada yada yada. Fans can check out the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on Netflix. Pluto TV also added the series to its Forever Kids channel. What I'll add to this is Red Power Ranger probably ain't going, because I believe he just got indicted on defrauding the government and the IRS out of money because he falsified documents. And now this is all allegedly, but he's been indicted for defrauding the government out of COVID relief money. So you're probably not going to see Austin St. John. Let me just pull up. I'm just going to pull up the news article here about him, because that came out. He pleads not guilty, but let's see here. What does it say about him? It says he went live to address fans. I'll pull this up. This is another article from comicbook.com that came a few days after that last one about the whole cast reuniting. It says Austin St. John was charged by the Department of Justice, in addition to 18 other people, in a federal indictment with violations of conspiracy to commit wire fraud in the Eastern District of Texas. He's the show's original Red Ranger, 18 other defendants. According to the indictment, he is alleged to have been part of a scheme to defraud lenders and the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program. To make funding and blah, blah, blah. So he's listed as somebody who was enlisted by another person to falsify a fake small business so he could get free funding for a business that didn't exist, which is full-on fraud. He's saying he didn't do it. We'll find out, but I'm pretty sure that means he's not showing up in the reunion. But we'll see how it moves on from there. I know Birdman will have something to talk about this in the future, so that's an ongoing story we'll be covering and discussing more as we find out more. And the other story I have here for our shortened edition of the news is from Polygon, and it says a new Daredevil series is coming to Disney+. It says here, Daredevil could soon get his proper costumed introduction into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A new Daredevil series is on its way to Disney+, according to a report from Variety. Variety reported that Matt Corman and Chris Ord are attached to write and executive produce a new series for the hero that would stream exclusively on Disney+. Corman and Ord have worked together for several years, co-creating shows like USA's Covert Affairs, as well as executive producing the series The Enemy Within and The Brave. The hiring would confirm long-standing rumors that a Disney Plus series was imminent, and certainly fits with the recent MCU setup, which suggests something close to a reboot of the Netflix series that was canceled in 2018. Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil in Netflix's Marvel Universe, showed up as Matt Murdock in Spider-Man No Way Home just last year, and Vincent D'Onofrio reprised his Netflix role as Kingpin for the Disney Plus series Hawkeye. There's no suggestion of when the series might air, or when we could find out more about the plot, but there's a possibility close on the horizon. On Tuesday, this was again a week or two back, Marvel reviewed a trailer for the new Disney Plus series She-Hulk, which, by the way, looks terrible. Well, at least the She-Hulk herself, but there's been rumors about that being pushed back to redo some of the special effects anyway. That's something we'll discuss probably at a further time as well. I'd be interested. I'd say out of all of them, they're not going to get Punisher back in the form that it was, and they're probably not going to get the same actors. But as far as the way the MCU was put together, Daredevil's the one that fits best, I think, with the way the MCU looks and how they could fit it in to the Spider-Man universe. I think that's a pretty cool way to go, and I think it does fit. It was a nice Easter egg to have him in the movie, and I think if they're going to go with more grounded, easier to make shows than like Hawkeye, this is one that they could use to sort of relaunch some of these characters. I think it's a good idea. And that's going to do it for the shortened news this week. We're going to take a break here, go into one of my reviews, and we'll be back with the weird news.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
Our friends over at Sega sent a review copy of Hatsune Miku Project Diva Mega Mix Plus. Wow, you'd have no idea how many times I messed that up and had to restart the recording because of the title. Well, they sent a review copy. It's the first game in the series available on PC, and it's available via Steam. I activated it and downloaded it, and it's actually pretty large. It's like over 32 or 33 gigabytes. For a rhythm game, that's a sizable chunk, especially for the visual style that it is. Now, this is the Plus version, is similar in that it's the same as the Switch version that released a few years back, only the Plus denoting enhanced features. Basically, you get the Switch game on PC in up to 1080p/4K visuals versus the 540p to 720p that was available on the Nintendo Switch. The graphics are clean. Also, it moves to a solid 60 FPS. I'm playing it on a PC with a Ryzen 3600 in there, so a few-year-old CPU now, and a Radeon 5500 XT, which is, as of this recording, it was the cheapest RDNA entry-level video card you could get back right when the pandemic was starting. Back when you could still get a video card for $200-$300. So it's been my workhorse PC. I'm not obviously a big PC gamer. I wanted something that could do 1080p gaming at a solid high to max settings, and that's what it could do when I bought it, 2020, 2019, that era. That being said, this game auto-detects what your video settings should be, and it maxed it out to the max it could for this monitor, this is a 1080p monitor with up to 144 hertz refresh rate. It is just playing at 60. It didn't appear to lock to any other higher frame rate. It actually didn't seem to give me any other options as far as refresh rate support, but it is a solid 60. It plays buttery smooth, didn't hog any resources of the system. It's actually a pretty efficient game. Music is obviously the number one factor here, and it is pretty, I would say, solid in its performance. My concern was going to be how does it sync up visual to controller input or keyboard input lag, and it has pretty substantial options in the game for compensating if your monitor is off by a bit. It didn't seem to need to do any of that. I will say this, you can play with a keyboard, and it gives you a bit of a tutorial. It plays a lot better with the controller. So I actually hooked up a Xbox Series X controller, which is basically the same as the Xbox One controller, just has that different share button in the center, but it operates basically the same. I played it that way using Bluetooth, and it seemed to be fine. There was no input lag on my PC. It might vary on yours if you have a different Bluetooth controller. And just to be safe and certain, I did end up connecting the controller via a wired USB-C cable, USB-C to USB-A, just to see if there was a difference there. And it worked obviously just fine, and picked up the controller as a regular Windows input controller. And the buttons configurations, as for how it appears on screen, it does retain sort of the input button layout, button mapping, the way you'd figure the PS4 game would. Because a few years back, actually it's more than a few years ago, was it 2016 or so, that the PS4 game in the series came out. I honestly don't remember the title anymore, but that had a crap ton of songs involved. And I know, in doing my little bit of research, that a lot of the Switch fans were upset that not as many songs were included in the Switch version. And then they had to slowly buy these like packages that had other songs in it for rights issues and everything. Also consider the fact that the Switch, there's no way you're getting this game as a 32 gig cart. So they obviously had to make room for things and to shrink it down initially, and you could buy them individually after. Well, what this does is this collects all the songs that were in the expansion packs, that were in the expansion and DLC packs for the Switch, includes them in the base game here. So you get everything that was possibly available on the Switch version, and you can actually purchase an extended music pack here that includes most, if not all, the songs from the PS4 version that were not available on Switch, as well as some other arcade games and versions that we wouldn't have obviously had because we don't have this arcade. The arcade games didn't really make it to the arcades here because arcades are basically dead outside of Japan. It includes songs that we had never had because of that in the pack too. So it's sort of the most well-rounded, if you want the catch-all most songs edition. This is this DIVA Megamix Plus pack is probably the platform for you. And I think a lot of people are going to be introduced to it that have never done it before because it's on PC. There is a catch here in that obviously we're not going to include any of the music in the review, even in the underlying underground background music for this, because it's probably going to be stuff that hits content matches or overall is not going to be very nice to streamers. So I feel like a lot of people that are going to buy this, that are in the influencer or streamer market, this is going to be one that's going to hit you pretty hard, I think, if it comes to trying to monetize your videos. So keep that in mind. This is going to be more of a pick it up and play it because you love playing it. It's probably not going to be one that streamers want to touch. But your mileage may vary, and if you don't mind, obviously not having monetization on your videos, you should be okay. And again, that's just my opinion. Take that with a grain of salt. It may be different in your experience. It's just, I'm seeing that there's not a ton of people talking about this. There also wasn't a ton of marketing for it. It sort of just showed up. Sega's been putting slowly a lot of titles on PC, and this I don't think people were expecting, and then it just popped up, and then our opportunity came to review it, and I wanted to say, hey, let's check it out. But I was thinking that's probably a reason why if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was out, that might be a reason, because it is something that is something you'd want to stream, but you might not be able to, or if you might not be able to in the way that you want to. That being said, I think there's a great value in this, in how many songs you get. It's like 100 to 170, I think, just maybe shy of that in the initial package here for about $40 US. Your mileage may vary depending on your region you're in when you get it, but it's actually a pretty good value for what you're going to put into this. And I'd say I'd recommend it if you're a fan of rhythm games and you like the style of Japanese pop music that's included here.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
For our weird news this week, I grabbed two stories. This first one you might recognize from the Associated Press. This is the second time we've covered this because it's a recurring theme, it seems. Pool noodle fight over the name Josh again attracts hundreds. I think we talked about this last year, and I guess they're doing it again. So I'll read you the story. This is from Lincoln, Nebraska, through the Associated Press. A couple hundred people grabbed their pool noodles and headed to a Nebraska park again this past weekend, to battle over the rights to the name Josh. The event started as an online joke when Josh Swain from Tucson, Arizona, sent out a tweet challenging anyone who shared his name to fight over it. After it took on a life of its own, Swain turned it into a real event last year at the random coordinates he included in his original note, which happened to be Lincoln, Nebraska. The enthusiasm from everybody here was just incredible, Swain told the Lincoln Journal-Star. Several of the competitors this year donned costumes, including masks, animal suits, and football helmets, before heading out to the Bowling Lake Park. But that wasn't enough to dethrone 5-year-old Josh Vincent Jr., who defended his title as the number one Josh. Saturday's event raised nearly $21,000 for Children's Hospital and Medical Center in Omaha. And the owners of the Josh Cellars wine label pledged to match that amount with a donation of their own. The hospital said it plans to share some of the donations with the Joshua Collinsworth Memorial Foundation that promotes water safety with its Josh the Otter mascot who attended Saturday's battle. Swain said he'd like to make the Josh fight an annual event, but he's not sure if he'll be able to keep it up. There's a number of factors in this crazy world, Swain said. I think that the hope is to keep this trend going so that we can keep the good times rolling. Just, it's a weird story, but I figured a funny weird story. And you know what? That's the kind of fun weirdness that we can all get into. I hope we report on it again next year. That was just a little quick one here. And we're going to finish with a true, interestingly weird story. Now, this is brought to us from Vice. And it says, dolphins recognize friends by tasting their piss. Scientists find wild experiment. It says here, scientists have discovered that bottlenose dolphins can recognize each other through taste, specifically the taste of their urine. Published this week in the journal Science Advances, the paper by researchers at Stephen F. Austin State University, Texas, and the University of St. Andrews, Scotland, found that dolphins can identify other individual dolphins just through the taste of their pee. The researchers discovered this while they were trying to find out more about dolphins' signature whistles. The specific calls they developed to refer to themselves. Jason Bruck, one of the study's authors, explained to Motherboard, which is a division of Vice, dolphins essentially come up with their own name, but researchers didn't know whether these would work the same way as human names. If I name your best friend, you'll picture them in your head, right? The scientists wanted to know if dolphins similarly recognized others' names. They test this by matching the whistles to a different sense. A human will use the same word to describe something, say a mug, whether they see, hear, or feel it. That's what we're trying to get at, Bruck said. To do this, they needed to match and mismatch the whistle to a different sense, as another way of identifying the animal. If another dolphin responded more to the match or the mismatch, it would know how they knew which individual it belonged to. They briefly floated, no pun intended in parenthesis, the idea of waterproofing a high-definition TV screen to explore visual cues, but this would have been very heavy, very expensive, and very hard to move around, said Bruck. That's where the urine comes in. The scientists recalled anecdotes of dolphins swimming through excretion plumes, that's piss to you and me, it says, with their mouths open. Dolphins can't smell because they don't have an olfactory bulb. So the researchers theorized they must somehow use the taste of the urine to gather information about its owner. After collecting samples from the dolphins in lagoons in Bermuda and Hawaii, which had been trained to give their urine for health assessments, they put the pee in a cup at the end of a very long pole and poured it in front of a dolphin while playing the whistle of another dolphin. Researchers measured how long the dolphins sampled the piss, opening their mouths and running their tongue through the water, and if the dolphins' responses changed when the pee came from a familiar or unfamiliar dolphin. Dolphins kept their mouths open longer when encountering the urine of an individual that was familiar to them, and when the urine sample also matched the correct signature whistle for the dolphin it came from, they hovered around the underwater speaker for longer than when the sound and pee did not match. This told them that dolphins can recognize each other through taste alone, something that no other vertebrate has shown to do. So that's a big deal, says Bruck. Leia Say, S-A-Y-I-G-H, so Layla Say, a marine biologist at Wood Hole Oceanographic Institute, who was not involved in the study, told National Geographic that the case findings opened doors to other questions around what they might be learning from urine trails. There's lots of powerful avenues for future research, Bruck agreed. More research is needed, so it sounds like he and the team may be pouring wee over dolphins for a while longer. That's actually a pretty interesting concept, that since they don't have a sense of smell, that the taste... Well, first of all, we rely on sense of smell for taste. If you lose your sense of smell, it's very difficult for us to taste things. And they have to be like really strong, like something that would be extremely, pungent or spicy to you or I, if we're smelling it first and eating it, it actually can be less spicy, other than the chemical of actually burning. But let's say something that has a lot of spice, or like for instance garlic or something. Garlic tastes stronger when it smells stronger, if that makes any sense. So I'm wondering if they just have like super sensitive taste buds, like way beyond what we're used to, which is pretty neat. So yeah, that's going to do it for the weird news this week. We're going to come back with one more review, and then I'll come back and close the show out with just a brief update of what's going to be released this week.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
Just a quick review of Touken Ranbu Warriors, which is the new Warriors game. Seems to be coming out with a new one every 6 months to a year now from those crazy people over at Koei Tecmo. This, I'll start off by saying, is odd in that I had no idea the franchise and the property that it was based on was a mobile series of card games, I believe. I am not in the mobile gaming realm for the most part. I am also not a card game fan. I like card games in physical form. I'm not really big on the digital card gaming kind of thing. But they take this property and translate it into the Warriors style of gameplay. And it translates pretty well. The story is strange. You are in control of living embodiments of famous swords. Like the swords come to life and are people, and those are the warriors you play as. And you're guided by like a spirit fox demon creature. And the whole point of this is some group of people are going and trying to alter history, and it shows you sort of a branching narrative path where it'll tell you, what was changed and the results of how it will be disastrous, and then you have to go in and fight to make sure the changes are not altered, and that you will end up on the right path. It's told through sort of a text-based selecting your next mission path. Your characters, you can then move into different rooms within your base of operations, and depending on what room you put them in over time, they'll gain certain experience that you can use to expand their skills and levels. So it's got a bit of an RPG strategy element to it, as well as leaving them in certain rooms can also unlock certain mini games. Mini games are fun for small short bursts of time when you're playing them, but there's nothing really big to write home about on it. Audio wise, it's got a fantastic score, really good music. Visually pretty decent considering that this is a Switch game. The graphical style does lend itself a little better to the Switch than some of the other Warrior style games have been. As far as frame rate goes, it works a little better in handheld mode, but you sort of know what you're getting yourself into when you're playing most new games on Switch now. The performance is not going to be anywhere near the quality you see on like a PS5 or an Xbox Series console, but it's adequate, and I didn't feel like there was any major slowdown or anything major problematic that was going to take me out of the gameplay and take me out of the immersion of the game. As far as whether or not the game was super appealing, it is a pretty generic Warriors title, outside of some of the strange story quirks here and there. It is going to be more for hardcore Warriors fans, as well as people that maybe are big on this franchise when it comes to the mobile titles. I don't think this is going to be a great entry-level point for new people or casual fans. If that's the case, you might want to wait till the price drops from a full-price game, because it is a single-player experience, pretty linear. But if you are, a fan, you've been waiting for it, I think you're going to get your money's worth out of it. If this is the style of game and this is the franchise that you follow, you'll be good, and you can rest assured that you're actually going to get a pretty good experience.
Those magnificent bastards. Color me kooky, but something very odd is going on around here.
You're not allowed to talk anymore.
And that's going to do it for the show this week. What do we have coming up on the podcast? Well, as of this recording, we have a show coming out tomorrow, which is going to be our preview prototype for the Summer Game Fest E3 season of new games, detailing what happened at the Indie Games show in Japan, as well as just a brief overview of what our coverage is going to be like for all these showcases this summer. We also have a new episode. I'm not 100% sure which one we were going to release, because we have them ready to go as is anyway. There's either going to be a loose cannon or a Future Imperfect released on Wednesday. Thursday, we're going to have a new episode of Earth vs. Soup with Aaron and Darlene. And then Saturday, we will have the ongoing adventures of Stargate SG TWIG. And then we're going to start a new week off again with new... I don't know if we have another interview to come out on the Sunday. If not, it'll be Monday before the regular show comes out. And that's going to be sort of the schedule we have. We're going to have new episodes on Mondays of the regular show. Tuesdays, we might have something if there's a special. But Wednesdays are going to be either Future Imperfect or Loose Cannon. And then Thursdays are going to be Earth vs. Soup. And that's going to be the regular rotation, plus our Saturdays being filled for the next 5-6 weeks or so with new episodes of SG TWIG. So that's it. I'll be back with an update from Birdman. Not sure when he's going to be on mic again recording, but I'll keep everybody apprised of how he's doing, as I know he posts on social media. But as far as the podcast goes, I can give you pretty much up-to-date information on how he's doing, and he'll pop in with reviews now and then. Might be a week or two till he has one ready to go, till he feels comfortable to record. But when he does, I'll be sure to include it in our regular shows. And that's going to do it. Hope everybody has a great week.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.